Hi there, gamers. We're here with Lydia, owner of the wonderful Instagram account AllTheWorldsAStage07. Lydia is a drama teacher and has started sharing the wonderful hobby of board gaming with her students. You've heard us mention her on the show a bunch. Remember the Missouri debacle? As she and Jeff have played games with each other's students via the internet. Thanks for being here, Lydia. We have some questions we would love to ask you. Most importantly, we want to know about you. Where are you from? Well, I don't know if you're from Missouri. We'll find out. How long have you been teaching? How did you get into board gaming? Stuff like that.
Okay, so hello, everyone. My name is Lydia. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. Now I seem like it's like, like what
I
else?
work in a button factory. Yeah.
Yes, I do. No, it's like I live in St. Louis, Missouri. I actually don't know where I was born because I was actually adopted.
Really?
So my biological family adopted me from Missouri, not Missouri.
Missouri.
Just like people, if they come from Illinois, it's not Illinois.
No, yeah.
Illinois.
Yep.
And it's pecan, not pecan.
And it's Detroit, not Detroit.
Correct.
There you go. But I was adopted, so I live in St. Louis and I teach. So I'm certified not K through 12, but like 5th grade through 12th. And I currently teach in University City, Missouri, which is kind of like a small kind of county within like St. Louis.
Sure.
St. Louis is very interesting because there's like different places within the place. So like St. Louis is kind of like the umbrella, and then just
Yeah.
Isn't that
other
called,
things.
like something like proper?
Which one?
Isn't that called like proper? Like
Like St.
Seattle
Louis proper? No, it's
when
not
you're,
Seattle.
Like, in Seattle, but you're like
Oh, I don't
not
know.
like I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I have
You might
no
be right,
idea.
Natalie. Natalie,
St.
your
Louis
credit
is-
score is really high.
St. Louis, the one with the arch? That's the arch, right?
That's the arch
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. The gateway to the
um,
west or something?
But yeah, so yeah, like gateway to the west, and
Haha.
You got that. Yeah.
but right now it's like I used to teach in rural district. I drove in my first year of teaching an hour and 15 minutes away.
Shut up.
I was the only person of color hired there, so that was an
Really?
experience. Yes,
Oh, yeah. What was that like?
it was. You know what? It was.
Let me
surprising.
ask you this. I don't mean to cut you off. Did you know that when you were hired?
No, actually, I assumed because there wasn't a lot of diversity up there.
Yeah.
But what was funny, my friend was like, "Hey, you know that district you kind of worked in?" I was like, "Yeah." They kind of had like a little situation going on. And then I realized that I was the only person of color, and that was like really the only person of color teacher that they've ever had in the entire district.
Wow.
How
So-
long ago was that?
That was maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
So not very long.
No, but it was a great foundational point because I had a lot of teaching moments. So like to be a positive representation of a person of color, because they had so many stereotypes. They were like, oh my gosh, like, are you going to be okay? Like, do you carry a gun on you the whole time in St. Louis? Like, because it was just around when the Ferguson protesting was going on.
Sure.
And so they're freaking out for me. They're like, do you need to stay up here, Waymeyer? And I'm like, no, I'm okay.
Uh-huh.
But I learned a lot about their cultures. I learned about coon hunting,
Oh,
about beaver hunting.
okay.
Oh, wow.
They brought chickens into my classroom.
What? So this is rural. You said rural.
Yeah,
So
Yes.
that's
They
pretty
rode-
rural.
They rode tractors and horses sometimes. They would have
So
special days.
So maybe that was Missouri.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
Missouri.
that's
And you live in
That's
Missouri.
You were in Missouri. Yeah, that's not Missouri.
But it was so interesting because it would be like, ride your horse to school day. And I'm like,
What? For real?
okay. Yeah. Or tractor day.
And
where-
what grade?
When
What
they were,
grade
like,
were you
bringing-
hired to teach?
high school. That was my preferred grade, and still kind of my preferred grade. It was just nice to have the experience to teach, and it was just really cool.
And
So
this was your first teaching experience?
my first teaching experience
Wow. So you
ever.
taught a lot more than what subject do
Yeah.
you teach?
Drama.
Speech and theater.
Oh.
Speech and theater. Okay.
Yeah,
So
and in my first year, I won Teacher of the Year.
Ooh, nice.
So yeah,
wow.
so that was, but it was interesting because with me winning that award, it kind of turned the community against me. Like in the school environment, I had a lot of support from the kids and the
Oh, I
parents.
see. The other teachers.
Yeah, because how they did the Teacher of the Year was like it was passed on to the same person, And with me being a new teacher,
Wait, there was like an incumbent?
yeah,
There was like
I
an
took
incumbent first teacher of the year?
yeah, I took it away from a person that was 5 years teacher of the year.
Oh my gosh.
And they were mad
And
about that.
Were all the
yeah,
other teachers terrible until you came along or something?
I think it was that they were just impressed that a first year teacher and first ever teaching job ever, they
Yeah.
were able to do that. And but yeah, so I started teaching up there. I kind of learned a lot of foundations, and then I decided to make the trek back home because driving for like 2 years, an hour and 15 minutes, and getting up at 4 a.m. is not cool with me anymore. So I was grateful to land a job in U City. But the theater jobs around here are a little bit tough. So once you're in a theater job, you basically stay there till you die. And they're very small. And so I decided to go to middle school. And middle school is super interesting.
I bet.
You gotta love the little babies. But I was going from a foundation of kids that can memorize and do high school stuff,
Sure.
and then getting into an environment where they've had theater teachers not last a year. I'm the third theater teacher. So,
Wow.
but yeah, so like I taught, and it's really, really cool. You know, right now, I'm currently in grad school for the second time. I thought I would not do that, but Jeff can relate that, you know, the education system is not how it is, and I want to be able to be more personal. So I am currently at the University of Missouri St. Louis for clinical counseling, where
Oh.
I hope to get specialized in psychodrama that uses their theater as therapy and play therapy using board games.
Yes.
So I'm excited for that.
Yes. Let's
That's
talk about that a
awesome.
little bit. Were you into board games this whole time? When did that start?
So I'm kind of a late bloomer into like modern board gaming. Like growing up, like, you know, we had Life, we had Monopoly, we had cards, we had dice. But my friend one day brought over Catan when I was in my 20s.
I never heard of that one.
I know it was like Catan,
Catan, I know.
Catan. This weird box of Catan. And I loved it. And I started from there. That's the first entryway game for me.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was like, okay, well, where do I find board games? So I went to the local board game shop, where those experiences were interesting because they were shocked that someone like me played board games. And so I would ask, you know, hey, I just watched this episode on Tabletop with Will Wheaton. Do you have Betrayal on the House on Hill?
They're like, what?
They're like,
are you in the right
what?
building?
Yeah.
Like,
what are you doing here?
Are you sure you're supposed to be here? And I'm like, yeah.
Is that seriously how they treated you?
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah, it's kind of, there's a lot of gatekeepery stuff.
It's just,
In the
it's
hobby,
kind of
you
like
know?
a closed club, but you
Yeah.
know, but then when I started spending money on games, they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
You're
right.
welcome here.
Yeah, everything's
welcome.
cool.
Yeah, you are.
Everything's cool.
So I started integrating that. So I started getting Coup. I started getting Roll for It. Like all my first layer games were from Will Wheaton
Yep.
because it was
Yeah.
so
Yep.
cool. He was
He
like
brought a lot of people in.
He was like my friend. And I was
Yeah.
like, I really liked how people were playing.
Well, and the production values are really good. He made it funny. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They taught the games well enough. They were simple enough games. A lot of those early ones, you know, like Small World and stuff like that. So I can definitely relate to that because Will Wheaton, he's done a lot for the hobby with tabletop.
And so that was kind of my way. And then when I started getting into board gaming with that person that got me with Catan. And then when I started meeting other people, I started working at Pieces, which is a St. Louis board game cafe I used to work at.
Awesome.
So if you guys ever come into town, I can take you there.
Okay.
I was a game navigator, so I had to learn games to
To
teach.
teach people.
Yeah.
And so that got me more into the hobby and got me more into different people. And I started exploring and gaming and finding a gaming group. And then kind of going back a little bit, I got introduced to more board games when I found out that Gen Con had a trade day for teachers.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I
Wednesday.
could get,
Yeah.
I can. I was
Did
like,
you know that, Jeff?
I was like,
I do now. Well, because Lydia and I were going to be there.
yeah, we were
Yeah,
going to
Wednesday,
present
we were gonna
together.
present.
Oh, that's right.
That's so, yeah, I have some questions about that later, but spoilers.
Spoiler alert. But yeah, it was 2018 or 19. I don't remember. It was someday far, far, far away. But I went to see my friend's workshop of RPGs in the classroom, Kathleen Mercury. She teaches about 7 minutes away, and she teaches in a higher district for gifted kids. And I was sitting there in the RPG. It was really large. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could use this in theater. I could use this in storytelling, public speaking. Everything is great. But the one criticism that I had with that was there was nothing negative about the conference. In that workshop, everything was positive. Everyone was like, oh, I have people that do this. Oh, I have people that do that. And I sat there and I started getting frustrated because who would teach the kids that I teach? A predominantly Black audience with trauma, middle school, that don't have the financial resources and the awareness that these games exist. And I'm like, who would do this? And then a light bulb went off and I was like, I'll do it.
Yeah, me.
I could do it. Me.
Right. Yeah. Why not me?
And then I was just energized. And I just decided one day to be like, I'm going to do it. And I did it. And I was nervous at first because, especially with middle schoolers, if they see something they don't like, they're like, I don't like it. I'm not going to do this. Miss Whitemeyer, why are you bringing this game here? La, 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 la. But I had to do different, techniques to get them in it. And the kids loved it.
What did you start with?
Oh my gosh. I started with just one.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's a good one.
But with incorporating it into the classroom, there's a couple of different things I had to do. One, I have a class size of 25 kids.
True.
So how can I make this fit for everyone?
Right.
So I adapted it to be on a Google Slides and used dry erase boards to make it an unlimited player count.
Oh, that's cool. That's really
And I had kids who would be the well, I don't know how to call it, the person who has to figure out the word,
Right.
Yeah.
turn their back, have it on a smart board. And I organized it from like box 1 through 7 and then 1 through 5. So they would know kind of where to go. They would write the words, and then I would go around the room and each person that had the same word had to go down. And it's hilarious because you would have 25 kids and only end up with 2 for the clues. And so a lot of the games that I brought into the classroom, I realized the kids really liked it. So I started consistently doing this thing called Board Game Fridays, where I brought games in every Friday. I used it as an open lab, and we can go more into that, just as a reward and like a therapeutic mind break for them.
Wow. So that was during the school day. That wasn't after. Okay. So it's a lab.
Was the response like initially positive, or did it take you a while to like?
No, it was actually really positive. I was surprised.
Well, they're probably like,
because-
"Cool, games at school. This is fun."
Well, my room kind of became a hot spot because
You're the popular
kids would
gamer.
go by. Yes, kids would go by. I'm like, I want to play games. And it was just really cool. I kept it consistent. Consistency was key. So on every day, like, Jeff would probably know this, you have to have your objective on the board of kind of what you're going to teach. And I made an objective of Board Game Friday. So I'd have like a funny meme, like, oh, the face you walk out when it's Friday. So when they come into the room, it's automatically welcomed. And I never had it forced. There was always 3 choices they could do. 1, they could catch up on their work. Because the one thing with middle school, my classes don't really count. Unlike high school. High school electives are on the transcript.
Oh,
Middle
I see what you
school,
mean.
there's not, they could fail my class and care less. So they could finish up on work, because if their core subjects are a lot more important, which they are, they could use that time to catch up, which a lot of kids did. 2, they could be on their Chromebooks, have free time with themselves. Or 3, they could play a game with a Waymeyer. And I'm always last because I didn't want it to be forced. So kind of the setup would be is that you would walk into the room, and I changed my desk layout to just have like 3 long tables. I would be at the main table with a game each week. Each week it was a different game. I would have it already set up. And then on the other tables would be like Monopoly or like Uno or Phase 10. Just if someone doesn't want to introduce themselves to a new game, they still feel comfortable going into something they're familiar with. Yeah.
Sure.
And so it was really cool because I would get all these regular kids, and remind you, I had to be very specific on what games I brought because I only have 45 minutes.
Oh,
Yeah.
So after
Well, and
taking
that's not
attendance,
including welcoming them, right? And getting set up.
attendance. So technically I only have gaming for 30. So that took a lot of me with doing modifications, accommodations for the kids, developing player aids so they know how to follow along, and me knowing how to play the game so well and quick and to the point that we have time to play.
That's awesome. Did you run into any resistance with the administrators at all?
Nope.
Or were they fully behind you?
Nope. They consider me a representative of the district to promote project-based learning.
Wow.
I can I can back that up because there's, my board game club meets after school on Fridays, and I'll text Lydia and I'll be like, hey, we're meeting at 2:30, 1:30 your time. And she, she's built such a reputation with this consistency and these positive connections with the kids that she could call out another teacher and say, hey, can I have so-and-so down to my room so we can connect and play board games with our Michigan people? And they would come down. So it's pretty cool.
Were you surprised about that, Lydia? Or how did you?
A lot of people, a lot of kids gravitate to me. It's always a habit. I'm kind of like their counselor, their mentor, their mom. I really care about the kids. So they use my room as a safe space. And some were just like, oh, well, it's just a game. They're just playing a game. However, I've been going to conferences. Like I went to Game School Con in California to represent the district, and my superintendent loved it. My assistant superintendent loved it. Before COVID, I was scheduled for MomoCon in Georgia, Origins, Gen Con, and Essen. So
You were going to go to Essen.
no!
2020.
Oh my gosh. Okay, what were you going to do at these conventions that you didn't?
I was teaching a workshop on how to incorporate board games in the classroom to promote diversity and inclusion.
If I'm going to Essen, I can just get a ticket for this panel
Yeah.
that you give, kind of thing. And Jeff, this is what you were going to do with Lydia at Gen Con?
Yeah, that was going to be, we're going to talk about just how we met and our connection and what I do in the classroom, what she does, and then how we kind of have used that to connect across hundreds of miles apart.
Yeah.
And the real cool thing with us and Jeff, me and Jeff, was that we had organized it to where both of us would have the spotlight. That we would mention myself, we would mention Jeff, and then we would mention ourselves as a whole.
Yeah.
Of just board games and technology. Because it's so cool, and it was so exciting because they started becoming friends, and it's age level differences, but it didn't matter because we all connected over a board game.
Yeah, through the game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was kind of my main purpose for bringing it into the classroom, because it was such a beautiful thing to see kids bond over a game. And I had kids that have autism, and I had a lot of kids in the special education department, and it was so cool for them to play amongst their peers like nothing. And I think that's what I'm missing the most about talking about it, because board games are such a therapeutic and community building. And especially in our times today, there was no talk of race. It brought everyone together.
Right.
And especially with Jeff, being able to explore the opportunities via Skype just showed another level of creativity of how you can use board gamings across platforms.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Have you noticed that any of the kids started doing this in their free time, started picking up some of the games at home and playing with their friends?
Yeah, a lot of them are like, Miss Waymeyer, can you teach me phase 10? Because I want to teach my family.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, where can I get medium? Where can I get this? And I told them, I'm like, hey, if you really want this, I will go pick you up a copy and I will send it to your house. And I would have these kids that really like the games as ambassadors in my room. For Christmas, before winter break, I led a 45-minute game, 45 people game count in my room. And it was so fun. So people that knew how to do the games, I had them at individual tables teaching. We had Telestrations, Medium, Boss Monster, Suro, and then on the other tables, Monopoly and Uno.
Yeah.
And
right. All-inclusive gaming there.
Exactly. And the one really cool thing was that it built a level of independence. And that's what I was going to talk about at my origins. And, you know, the new conference is coming up was just how much it builds independence and communication skills. And when people would question, they're like, Lydia, you're just teaching a board game. Why are you doing this? This isn't a part of your curriculum. And I'm like, look, I can make it a part of my curriculum. Actually, before COVID, I was actually in the development of producing a class, RPGs in the classroom, the Actor's Toolbox, where I would take board games and different RPGs, and I still will get it done. It just depends on how COVID is going to go, if we can go back into the classroom.
How do you incorporate an RPG into the classroom?
So you use it as in general, or just in my
like
field?
like you were saying before, like with your board game Fridays, you have 45 minutes or really 30 minutes. You know, and when you think of something like an RPG, and you know, the scope is huge, right? Or it can be huge. And, you know, you could spend 30 minutes in one tiny corner of one tiny room making one tiny decision. How do you do that?
So the one beauty that I had is the kids that I played with, Jeff, were my advanced drama class. So I used it as a storytelling improv unit. So the whole class, every day, I was doing RPGs in different sessions. So session 0 was just comprehension about what the RPG is. 2, the next session would be actually character development, because in acting, you have to develop your character, which is so awesome. So they're able to do mermaids. I did mermaid adventures. And let me tell you, guys love mermaids just as much as girls.
I think mermaids are scary, but
they enjoy
well, that's
it
because
so
Natalie
much.
thinks they're real in the ocean. Natalie thinks we're gonna go to the ocean and she's gonna get pulled under by a mermaid.
I've just seen like a scary movie once with a mermaid that was really scary, and also there was that weird.
What movie was this?
No, it was that documentary on Discovery
also the
Channel.
Oh, The Little
documentary, which was
Mermaid. It was called The Little
fake. They were
Mermaid.
freaky. It's not The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Oh, The Little Mermaid?
This documentary we saw on the Disney Channel.
Yeah.
No, it was not. It was, whatever. We'll get into that later.
The Daughters of Triton is what it was called.
But
Yes.
that makes total sense. Like character development, like yeah, you can totally apply.
And I have a question for you. We are recording, correct?
We are,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Do you mind if I share my screen with you?
No, do it,
No.
please. Oh,
Okay.
I might need to turn that feeter on.
Yeah, give
Do
me-
I need?
Go ahead. Nope, you're good now. Yep.
Okay. You're gonna see a lot of my tabs. Can you see? Okay.
Porn, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, Mermaid Adventures.
Okay.
Oh my god.
So it was kind of like an introduction into storytelling and RPG. So with education, you always have to kind of give them, the students, just a basic. So I introduced it with this. You'll be incorporating acting, storytelling, and improv all into the experience. You know, and just in the next couple of slides, in key roles. So I broke it down based on the manuals of what we had. So there are navigators, you know, I was the main moderator. I was the GM. And I said, for one game, I'll be the navigator. And if you like, I'll let you guys be that role.
Sure.
Because the one thing about, you know, theater is building the ensemble. You want everyone to be included. And that was one of the things I wanted to really do with bringing board games in the classroom, is to make sure everyone has a place and make sure everyone has a voice when we do it.
Wow.
And so I would do like how to play the game. You know, we talked about scenes, and we did a lot of scene works with performance, so it falls right in. And they really had to practice active listening. So RPGs could really be helpful in the public speaking classroom, because if you were in a debate, you have to make sure that you listen. You have to make sure that you know what your opponent is going to say. So they would have to do that in the RPG. And I did dice information. So I brought my own dice, and each kiddo had their own dice, and you had to go through terminology. So it's also a way of checking for understanding. And if I wanted to make a quiz, which I did, what does a D6 mean?
Yeah.
They would have to do that. So even though we're having fun with it, they still have to prove to me that it's educational.
Yeah.
That they're getting something out of it.
Wow.
It's seriously impressive.
Yeah, and RPG seems like a really, now that you've explained it all, it seems like it'd be a really good application for school, because Jeremy, the guy, he was him and I started the podcast back in the day. He's an RPG.
Mm-hmm.
He loves RPGs.
Very
And
creative.
what he always tells me is, because he's always wanted me to GM an RPG that he's creating. And he, so he was like coaching me a little bit on, how to GM. And he's like, one of the main things I always tell people if I'm telling them how to GM is you're kind of, think of it like improv, right? Where you're always saying yes.
Yep. Yes.
You're encouraging the players to live in this world that you're kind of guiding them through, and when they ask if they can do something, you want them to have fun with it, so you're trying to, you're always saying yes to them. And I could see that being something that students might find very fun, the things they do work. A lot of people, when they think about board games, like I know Natalie, you can testify to this one. A lot of people are afraid to get into board games at the beginning, or can be, because they're afraid to lose, right? Or they're afraid they'll look stupid, or they don't want to play because of, I don't want to be exposed here. But in something like an RPG where it's just all yes, there's no it's just storytelling. That's wow.
There's no risk, and that's actually one of the things that I was going to talk about in my conference, is that I established different rules of how to introduce it into your space. And one of it, there are no errors, even if there are some, because what you just said, there is a lot of vulnerability when you do board games. You don't want to mess up. And especially in middle school, and Jeff could probably mention, just any kid, even in high school, if they mess up on something and their peers are watching, they'll shut down. They'll be like, no, I'm not going to do it.
Yep.
It's like, we're not going to do it at all. And for example, if an error happens, I approach it in this way. So an example, we were playing Exploding Kittens. You're supposed to draw a certain amount of cards, but someone drew 2 cards. And other kids started following suit. So how I would, even though I know the error, even though that's not what the rules say, I approached it with being, hey, make sure you're just drawing 1 card instead of 2 next time, but keep playing how you guys are playing. We'll reset it when we do. And with that, they know what they did wrong, so to speak. They know the error, and they'll fix it next time.
Sure.
I modify a lot of rules in board gaming to make it so it is easy enough to understand. And even though it's not playing correctly to what the game, they're still playing the game anyway, and they're having fun
for them.
Yeah, it's
I think we think of as teachers that our goal is at the end of the day, our students learn something, and our students learn, in some classes, math teachers want them to learn math. A lot of times in classes, you want them to learn how to be nice. You want them to learn how to raise their hand. You want them to have these things. And really, if that's the goal, the method at which we get there should be up to us. And if it's through RPGs, if it's through something else, that's great. And all these kids have these same problems, not just with like board games, like Ryan said, where people have some trouble getting into the hobby because, how intimidating is it to get into something when I'm just playing Catan and they're playing something so much heavier, and like, what's this? It's the same thing with kids in classroom. Like, I don't want to raise my hand. Look how intimidating it is. There's all these eyes looking at me.
Right. Yeah. And then I'm wrong. And now everyone
laughs. And what's hard as a teacher is, and what Lydia does so well, is create an environment where it's okay to mess up, and that they feel okay. They feel comfortable to make a mistake. Like, they can approach her, they can just make a mistake, and then everybody's just okay with it, because the kids have learned that this is what we do. This is the process. This is, we all go through this to learn something.
Because we've all been in gaming groups where you have like the rules person that is always going to call you out. You didn't do it right. You're supposed to do this. And it completely ruins the fun out of it.
It can, for sure.
And so I'm really very aware of my tone when I talk to them and how I address errors, because I just don't know what's going on at home. I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, you did this wrong. And then they completely shut down because maybe they have family at home that yells at them. Mm-hmm. There's just different factors with that type of stuff that I have to be aware. And especially since there's not a lot of representation of people that look like them in the board gaming community, I want them to at least have a positive representation of someone that cares. So if they do try to find, the hobby when they feel it's time, they know how it is. They know the welcome of everything, which is so key.
Do you have any stories about a student who, and Natalie kind of touched on this earlier, who you introduced a game to and you know, they maybe told you later, I don't know if this has happened to you, you know, hey, I played just one with my friends, you know, over here, and we all loved it, and now they want. Do you have any kind of those kinds of stories that you have, you know, shown your students something and they've come back to you, and how that made you feel?
Mainly it was one of my girls, her name was Molly, and she has like a family, like a lot of young kids, a lot of young siblings. And she went out and bought Medium, and she started carrying like a notebook and was like, okay, Miss Waymire, this is the game of the day, right? And I was like, okay, where can I find Suro? Can I borrow? And I let her borrow it, and she brought it back. You know, I sleeve all my cards before they leave.
I'm like, I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah.
I mean, because all of the games that I bring in are mine. They're my personal
For sure.
property.
Just like Jeff, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I have to establish a responsibility with them and tell them, hey, these are expensive. Don't like bend my cards or try to take my dice because it's cute, you know, because they have to know that we'll lose privileges.
Right,
You're
be
not,
respectful.
yeah, it's like I'm bringing this stuff in. And also, if there's a game that I really want them to play and they prefer to play Deep Sea Adventure, I'm fine with that because they're still wanting to engage in the hobby.
Yeah.
So even though I made, you know, I wanted to, what did I want? I wanted to bring Quacks. I brought Quacks to them one time. And they're like, can we just really play the Mind and Deep Sea Adventure? And I'm like, okay.
No.
I know. I struggle with that sometimes too, where I'm like, I
But
bought
I
real
really have
games.
this really cool game.
Yeah.
Yeah, like play
You
cool
know?
games.
And yeah, and so there's just a lot of things like as a gamer, you know, if they're like, Miss, I've had a lot of kids, Miss Waymire, can we play Uno together? And I'm like,
I know. I do the same thing. Like, come on.
I'm an ambassador for the hobby.
Yeah.
Fine.
and it's like,
This
well,
isn't
we
about
can play
me.
base 10. And yeah,
That's
I
so
have a hard
cool.
time with that.
I know.
Like, ah.
Yeah.
it,
I just
it's
want
a
to do what I
really,
want to do. It just goes to show you the world of board games, how even so much more there is than you think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, just listening to you talk is fascinating about your perspective on the hobby and how, you know, you view the hobby as a tool, a gateway for the children to learn and grow and become better humans in general. And just, it's just fascinating to listen to all this. So all the questions I had, I just threw them out the window. You just talk. Go ahead and you just say whatever you want.
We'll just sit back.
well, like,
I
one
feel
of the,
this big now. My stupid little questions. What made you want to start an Instagram account?
no.
More.
But I mean, to add on to that, I just wanted, the one thing that really annoys me about Instagram and board gaming, and I'm going to say it, everything looks the same. Everyone takes a picture of a board game. There's
agree.
nothing really like unique anymore. It's
Okay, now
exactly.
that's a good segue into your boyfriend's account.
Yes.
Let's talk about playing four games
This
for a
isn't the
quick
same.
hot second. If
No.
anything's not the same.
Yes.
All right, so you want to know the first one I remember seeing you in, Lydia, was a post that Zach made, and it was one of my favorite games ever.
Forbidden Island.
Claustrophobia.
Claustrophobia. Oh, okay.
That was the funniest picture. I saw that. So if you guys don't know, it's the box of Claustrophobia, like goes up to here, and then Lydia and Zach are like this on the top of the
like
frame.
they're being
Like,
squished.
ah! Yeah. It's so funny. I don't know how, I mean, his account, I know it has grown, but I don't know how that's not like the one of the most popular accounts on the entirety of Instagram, because he's so creative.
Like
with
one of the things is
Photoshop.
that he's considered like the Photoshop wizard.
Yeah.
Like he does everything. Like, so if you see him with like a board, like with his Raiders thing, that's a real board from our table that he's put stickers on. And yeah, one of the things that, you know, and I'm not going to speak that much for him, but we talk a lot, and I was like, I appreciate you for doing something that's true to you.
Yep.
Because I feel like a lot of people aren't doing that. Everyone's trying to follow a trend, and Zach playing for games is just like, I'm just going to do what I want
do my own
and make
thing.
it fun, and it's creative. And so like for me going into the board game, like there's not a lot of people that are showcasing my type of kids playing board games
Absolutely.
or any kids. And I don't know if you've seen, I know you've probably seen some of my posts. I always put an educational spin to it on how you can adapt it, how you can modify, you know. And that was why I started it. It's just to give a platform for people to know that you can do this in the classroom if you just put a little spin into it and just try.
It's amazing. Yeah, not
is.
especially just hearing you talk and I'm just gonna go here. You just do your thing.
No, come back.
Gosh,
Do you ever play games like with your friends?
So yeah, so
you only play games with children?
I know.
Oh,
I mean, like, are you a big
so
gamer outside of schools too?
but yeah, I do. So before COVID, I was in a weekly game group, Jamie Stagmeyer's group. He's a really good friend of mine.
What?
Mhm.
Right.
Really?
Mhm.
That's
I guess
cool.
we'll get the invite when COVID's over.
Yeah.
And so like I met him from, a friend that used to work for Gray Fox, and there's a couple like, greater than game people. I'm actually going to be meeting with my friend to talk more about this. And he was the first group that I've been to where I felt welcomed.
Really?
Yeah, it was really nice. And I told him
No, the first group where she felt welcome.
I know.
it was because a lot of people, when they look at me, they don't see me as a gamer, and they don't think that I have interests in board gaming. And
Now, can I ask you a quick question about that? If you don't
yeah,
mind?
sure. I don't care.
Do you feel like that was because you're a person of color, because you're a
I think
woman,
so.
or both?
Um, well, I find that there's more like Caucasian women more open into the board gaming circles than there are African American women or any other people of color, because there's not a lot of us. And if there are a lot of us, they're kind of nervous to get into it. I have noticed like a lot of people of color play Warhammer or like War Machine.
Really?
Mhm.
More miniature stuff.
Yeah, like more miniature stuff.
Huh.
But I rarely see anyone that looks like me in a board gaming circle. I mean, when I worked at Pieces, I did see some, but it's usually one. And when I would teach people, people would look at me and they're like, are you sure you know this game?
Ugh.
I'm like, yeah, I play Clank. I hope you die.
Yeah.
But with Jamie's group, I didn't see that. I did get some, like, a little feelings of some people are like, oh, this is new. But then after they got to know me, it was great. And after Jamie put his Black Lives Matter statement out, I told him, and I appreciated him. I was like, you've always been welcoming to me, and I appreciate that.
So here's a question, and you do this with your kids in your classroom, but what do you think, as people listening who play board games, who are probably a bunch of white dudes and Miss French Toast, like, what do you think? That's Sam, by the way. And, like, what do you think that as a community, as a board game community, that we could do to be more inclusive, to be more welcoming? We literally have an amazing opportunity where we literally have a table. Like, people always talk about, like, let us have a seat at the table. Like, we literally have a table. Like, we can let people sit. So I'm curious of what you think we can do as a community to kind of be more inclusive, to be more welcoming.
I just think just being open. The biggest thing that I think is going to happen, I'm going to go on a little tirade. I don't want people to invite me to the table because I am a person of color.
Of course.
And because to promote diversity and inclusion.
Sure.
I have a feeling that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that I feel like a lot of the board gaming community are going to be searching for Black designers just to say that there are Black designers out there. Yeah. And that's the same thing with my Instagram account. I don't want people to follow me because I am a Black educator that teaches Black kids. I want you to follow me because of my content and my quality. Mm-hmm. And I actually inspired Jamie to write his 4th statement. I hope to work with him soon on bringing more board games into the community. But his 4th statement on his post, I don't have it in front of me. The one thing I told him, I was like, Jamie, you are of quality. You make great games. Don't hire people of color just to have that person. Don't feel pressured to put the hashtag on there just for face value. So I feel like a lot of people in the gaming community just don't do it for face value. Don't feel needy. Don't feel like you need to have that person or by person of color there. Just treat them like any other person. And if they're interested in getting a game, get a game. I did have 2 adult men at a gaming event where they were going to do Heaven and Ale, I think.
Yep, Heaven and Ale.
And they told me you wouldn't like it. You wouldn't like the theme. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and play Dinosaur Island because they were welcoming. It's all about body language. I think a lot of people are going to be scared now, which is so frustrating because they just don't know how to approach. And it's like when I tell people that the board gaming community isn't very diverse or inclusive, they don't think about it. But when I tell them, it's like when you look at Dice Tower, when you look at all the social media accounts, face value, what do you see? And they're like, oh, you're right. Which there isn't anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like getting into the hobby, you usually have to have finances because it's very expensive. You have to know people that are about it, and you have to be introduced to it. It's African American people, they do have resources, but we just use our resources in a different way. And so one of the ways that I'm trying to get them to use their resources in the classroom in a therapeutic hobby is by introducing them to board games. Now they have this little piece now of where they could go.
Yep.
But it's a hard situation. I'm just very concerned with our community that a lot of people are going to be very forced to do things. It's like I've had people email me and we're like, Lydia, I support you and I support your cause. Or they apologize to me for not protesting and I get offended. I'm like, why are you saying this to me? There's no reason to apologize.
Yeah.
You're my friend.
Right.
And I don't want people that aren't people of color to feel ashamed that they're not inviting people that don't look like them, because there could be, they don't know gamers that don't look like them. Like no one is technically wrong. It's
Right.
just a couple of different tweaks we have to make there. And just if there's a person that doesn't look like you, just be welcoming and open and warm.
You are saying everything that I kind of like talked to Ryan about this. It just, to me, it feels like you just use common sense. You just be kind. You don't, making people feel guilty for
Or
something
forced.
forced is not the best way to initiate change. Just do better.
And I think what me and Jeff are doing are like, we teach in a demographic that is predominantly African American. The best thing about board games, they're colorless.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're colorless. And like I've shared with Jeff, you could put a game, it's about fun. Yep. I didn't have to like tell them like, oh, Black people aren't supposed to play board games, there was, what made me do it more was that I do video tutorials sometimes so they can have the visual approach. And a kid asked me, they're like, why aren't there people more like me that play? Can you find videos like that? And I'm like, you know what? I'll try. Knowing that there's not a lot.
Yeah.
So I eliminated the video and had it me teach the rules. So they can have that positive representation.
Good. That's a good idea.
I just don't want people, like, I worry, and I'm sorry for going on a tangent.
No. Talk as long as you'd like.
That with all of this going on in the community, I think I recently saw, Board Game Geek posted a list of Black designers in board games. Yeah. And one of my goals is to go through them, because I don't want myself, or I don't think that it's right for people to support a person because of their color, like board game wise, because the mechanics may not be good. So I really hope people really think about that and not try to lie to themselves. If it's a bad game that you don't like, it's okay to say that it's a bad game.
Sure.
Just don't promote the person because they're Black. And I know you guys have probably seen a lot more people of color now coming up, from the ashes of board gaming, and it's like they were there before.
Right.
Why now? And is it going to fizzle out
Yes.
You know, like
Absolutely.
everything's kind of fizzled
How
out.
many people actually mean the things that they say, you know, as far as their support goes? And
Right, how are they going to incorporate that?
yeah, like
into
what are you
their
actually
life
going to
going
do?
forward?
What can you do? You know, so I agree with you. Can I ask you a couple specific questions, Lydia, that
Yeah, sure.
you talked about the group that you're in with Jamie. That was the first group you felt welcome. And again, this is, you don't have to mention if you don't feel comfortable, but can you talk about what happened that made you not feel welcome in prior groups?
Um, I just think people didn't consider me as a person to play games. I was kind of more as I don't know how to say this. It's like a tag along. Like most of
Okay.
the games
So do
that
they
they
not
would,
give you the time of day?
They
They just
kinda like
kind of,
yeah,
oh, you're just here and
it was the same when I would go into like different comic book stores.
yeah.
I would walk around the store for like 10 minutes before anyone recognized me. And they would doubt that I knew about games.
I don't understand that.
And there will always be people that would play games, and I would say, "Oh, hey, I play games," and no one would ever invite me. And I was worried about going into the group because I am the only, you know, African American female that games with him.
Mhm.
And I was worried. I'm like, okay, well, I'm in a predominantly white setting with a lot of, it was a true gaming group. Like we
Sure.
start at a time
Yeah.
and we play at a time.
Yeah.
Seriously,
Yeah.
And then it was kind of a fear too, because all of these board gamers were really into board gaming. And I, you know, I'm still getting used to it, but I love the aspect of
Yeah.
just playing and having fun. And so that, you know, with seeing it, they just saw me as like a gamer. They didn't look at my color, you know, they never mentioned it. They just looked for me. And
You're
that's
talking
kind of,
Jamie's group?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was nice and it was refreshing and it was therapeutic. And I really enjoyed that. It was always welcome, you know, and that's kind of my standpoint with the whole board gaming in my room in whatever educational space, is to provide opportunities for people to heal and feel welcome no matter who they are. There shouldn't be an issue of race, there shouldn't be an issue of sexuality. Just like you guys said, being kind and welcoming, you know. It
Well, I think
shouldn't
that's
even be,
really important
That's how
for
it
people.
should
I think
be.
that's important for people to hear and to know. You know, that's what you're looking for when you're going into somewhere that's predominantly, you know, a hobby. That's most of the people don't look like you. You know, what are you looking for? You're looking for inclusion, welcome, and like treat me the same as you're treating everyone else. I don't want special treatment. Just treat me the same.
body
Right?
language is key, because I've noticed like when I would walk around people, they would tense up. And that's just because of my background in speech and theater. So a lot of people need to really focus on that, because even though you may seem welcoming, like with verbal, your nonverbal is going to speak more. And
Right.
that's what we're going to look at first. So to go back to Jeff's, like, you know, like how can, you know, a group of white people, you know, promote diversity? It's just be very aware and just be yourself. I just feel like a lot of people in the community are going to be scared to be themselves. They're going because they don't want to mess up. They don't want to be wrong. They'll be attacked on social media if they sidestep anything, and completely missing the point that it's always been a table. Come sit.
Yeah.
And it's not anyone's fault that maybe your table doesn't have everyone, and that's okay. It does not mean that you guys are not wanting to be inclusive and diverse. And I just hate that people feel guilty about that. So that's why it's like, instead of people feeling guilty, and instead of people, you know, just posting hashtags and promoting different shops and different people, what are you going to do in your community to be able, if you're going to be in the board gaming community, how are you going to bring it to people? And that just strengthens my mission to try to bring board gaming into classrooms around St. Louis, to bring it for those kids that I know therapeutically it can help, that it can heal, because I've seen it happen in my classroom. It's a channel of communication for them, to continue working with Jeff, to expand a little bit more, you know.
Oh, you're giving me the goosebumps.
You know, to do different things.
Goosebumps.
Yeah, and Lydia,
I know.
you know, one of the things that I always think about is like when you know better, you do better, and it's something that when you're being cognizant of like, you know, am I being welcoming? Am I treating my white students the same as I'm treating my black students while we're playing board games? You know, making a conscious effort of realizing things and seeing the world around you and then doing something about it. And like you said, not being forced. It's not something that should be forced or pushed upon people, because then it becomes a fad. It becomes over with quickly, and we don't want that. Like these things should have been happening. Like these.
Yeah, it's like, why now? And it's bad.
And if it's now, great, but it now needs to continue for the rest of our lives. It doesn't.
That awareness you guys were talking about, right? That awareness now. Okay, now we're aware. If you weren't aware now, you should be aware now. And what are you going to do with that awareness?
I really just don't hope that board game companies are going to like just start sending games to like communities that are diverse, because here's the problem. Who's going to teach those kids those games?
Right.
You're just going to send them boxes of cardboard. They're not going to know anything.
Yeah. They're going to be like, I don't care about this.
It's just not a checked list, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so I want to say something else, but I'm just not sure how it's going to come off. But in regards to games that are by Black designers, I feel that it has to be a good representation to be brought into my classroom, because kids see visually a lot. Someone had asked me, they're like, have you really thought about like how many games that have been designed by non-people of color? And I'm like, I don't care. Because it's just, if they like the mechanisms and they like the game, then why should I think about, you know, anything more? Like the game Rap Gods. And I love Omar. I really do. But I don't know if I would be able to bring that into my classroom, just for fear of like the negative stereotypes that some of the cards have.
Sure.
I deal with kids with trauma. Anything could be triggering. Everyone has trauma.
Sure. Yeah. Eric Lang games probably aren't going to work in the classroom.
And you just have to be considerate. And because I don't bring that into my classroom does not mean that I don't support.
Of course.
You know, I want to have a positive representation of this community, because it's for everyone. We just have to be able to provide opportunity for everyone to have a piece of it, you know? And
which is what you're doing in your classroom. You're doing it in your classroom every day. And that's the way that we be inclusive. We teach kids. So if we're just sending games, like you said, to like working class communities, we're just sending them there. You know, this is where I feel like there's an opportunity for the game community and the game publishers to utilize like libraries. Like librarians can teach someone a game and you can check it out, or utilize teachers or call like a drama and say, hey, a drama class or a performing arts, and say, I have these games. I think they would be great for, you know, to introduce to your students, not just sending them to a house or just letting them play. Like have someone there to include them into the hobby that, again, is majority white males. Like bring other people into it.
Because one of the things that like I have in the back of my mind that I would love to do is to do like a nonprofit where I teach corporations like game-based learning and how to build, you know, community with them, but then also in schools, like going to each school. And I had like a title be like Game STL, where I go in and I teach people board gaming and have events for community building, and just have, you know, therapeutic approaches. Like Devon from Black Wall Street, I use his game as a history tool about the Tulsa Massacre. And I developed curriculum I'm starting to develop curriculum for it. So people can use that. And it's just a positive, great game. It has capabilities for everyone to learn because of the Monopoly-esque style, which is good for beginning people, but also it tells a history. One of the cards on there, which is kind of backs me up with like, there are errors, you know, there are no rules if there are some.
Yep.
There's a card in there called the Tulsa Riot. You lose all your properties, but you get a chance to rebuild. Like what a great lesson for kids to have that, to know that you've worked very hard for everything, and that even though that it's gone, you have a chance to restart. It doesn't end the game. So we need to find more opportunities to be able to present people with that. Find more opportunities in our board game circles to talk about what we can do, how we can get things developed, and just make sure that your community is kind.
Yeah.
I just
Sounds
think
like-
kindness.
Yes, absolutely. I think that you won't be at this job until you die. Sounds like you're going to be doing other great things, hopefully.
I'm really focusing on the therapeutic because I really want to do play therapy with board games, because I've had experiences where I've had a kid that struggled, and I just made a tic-tac-toe board and I passed it to her, and she started talking, and we just started doing hangman and different things. And I just think that the element of RPGs and the element of board games can really help kids, same with drama, to take themselves out of their own shoes and have confidence to be in another pair.
Sure.
Yeah, and I know Ryan and I have always spoke about just kind of board games even just being this a way to escape, where if I have a lot of things going on at home, if I have trauma going on at home or at school, this can be a way to just step away from that for a minute, and that minute can mean the world to a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then that can launch you into the hobby. Like, oh, board games is what I do.
Look what it just did for me
to get away. And I've done, and Lydia, you're going to be published here very soon with stuff you're doing. But I've, even read some things, and I feel you're going to do it soon. But like, I've read some stuff about how board games are kind of like soothing for students and people on the spectrum, and how it just kind of allows, let me focus on this. And you doing it with, trauma and that kind of stuff in your classroom, it falls right in line with that. And I'm just waiting to read your published article from.
Oh. Like my brother suffers from schizophrenia, and I've recently brought board games to him, and it was so cool just to see us like all engaged over Suro. He beat me several times, but it was just interesting for focus. And I just think if we just keep focusing on things that make us happy. I know a lot of people in the media are criticizing people for like enjoying themselves with everything going on.
Yep.
But I think we still need to do things that make us happy and what focuses in on our lives. Because if we focus on everyone else, then we're not going to get anywhere. So like for one of the things with COVID, like I ran a RPG via Google Classroom. And for 6 different sessions, because I wanted kids to have that opportunity to escape this world a little bit. Yeah. It was interesting.
We've done that. We've actually done that too.
With
Jeremy, the guy we were talking about.
He had like a camera like pointed down on a piece of paper, and he'd draw the map out as we went.
Do you mind if I share it with you really quick?
Do it.
Sure.
Okay.
Do it.
Show and tell. I love show and tell. Okay, so Jeff would be very familiar with this. So Google Classroom.
Yay.
Okay. So basically I have 6 classes. And so I teach theater and public speaking. And I modified an RPG for March to May as assessments. And so what I've done is that all the way down, all the kids would have all the information. And I would set it up via Google Forms to where they would know their setting, because we're going to be talking about the setting. And I would do Google Slides to kind of explain, independently on how they can do things.
Lord, this is next level.
I know.
What am I doing with my life?
No.
Holy
Ryan's kids'
crap.
Google Classrooms was
I got
the
an order
worst.
track. Yeah.
So, the best things about RPGs, the story is what you make it, and so it's just, there's no risk. It's no right or wrong. Hi, Rocco. And so why the setting? So we can do with everything. So they would do like, so what's next? Head over to, Google Classroom for that. So they would go back to Google Classroom and they would go to their classwork. And I have too much stuff. I'm sorry. View more. So I did this every 2 days for 6 different classes.
Wow.
But session 0, they had to find definitions for the words because they needed to know what we were going to talk about. Mm-hmm. So what's a supervillain? What's a superhero? What's an adventure? So what's an NPC, PC, cooperative game? And what's the purpose of a mask? because a lot of kids and just ourselves, we don't really know our identities just yet. I don't think we ever will because we're always changing. So it's really cool for kids to kind of put on a different mask during this time. And so because I didn't have them around the circle, I had to do what was called hard framing, where I presented a scenario. And so how they got points is, I don't know if you could see this, is I would write basically the scenario. So like this one's like, we hope you'll read this request. Please help us solve this mystery. And then I would say, all right, team, we've heard the request. I have some ideas on where to go from here. Grabs marker, and they would write, I would do this, I would do that, I would do that. And I had 6th through 8th grade. And yeah,
Wow.
That's kind of what I did.
That was very cool.
Do you sleep?
Yes, I did. Well, I wanted to do something fun because the thing with my kids is, one, it's COVID, they're home. They're not going to want to do my work. They're still going to pass on. Grades didn't matter.
Yep.
2, what's something I'm not going to pull my hair out about? 3, I've always had an idea to do an RPG unit via Google Classroom. I'm going to do that. And it was something fun. And one of the hard things that came up is that a lot of kids, I wanted them to get deeper, which would be in the classroom, but they all did it. And based on the answers, I had 6, 7, 10 different answers from different people. So I had to put that in there. So
I bet you got a lot more participation, more contributions from your students than if you.
Oh my gosh, yes, more
done drama standards. Yeah,
like more, because there are so many other teachers that were having them do so much. I'm like, I just want something that if they said they need to send a letter, they sent a letter. It's okay. And they still got their points. So like what I'm doing, I got those choose your own adventure books, Jeff.
Yeah.
They donated some to me.
That's
so
cool.
I'm going to start creating the choose your own adventures and transfer them into Google Classroom and like Google Docs. So if people want to experience it, they can do that type of stuff.
That's great.
Super cool.
Jeez.
No.
Again, I'll say, what am I doing with my life?
No, I feel
I'm like, I just want to relax all day and do nothing. Lydia's like, I gotta write 10 more RPGs by noon.
Oh my gosh, I want to not.
I'm
still, it's like I've kind of like with everything, I appreciate all the kind words people have said, because I kind of feel like sometimes I'm not making an impact a little bit, and I kind of really, that's my goal, is to make an impact and to bring awareness.
Yeah.
Especially with breaking down board games. I started to during COVID, like writing curriculum to each game. Like, so if people want to teach their kids unschooling, game schooling, homeschooling, and they want to teach like a terraforming Mars, but like as a science unit, they could do so.
Lydia, you're making a difference. Let's just put that out there.
Well, we're going to do everything we can to spread your what?
Disease? What are you talking about, Natalie?
It's like,
your ideas.
Your coronavirus?
Well, I know it's like I need to come up there because I want to come up there and visit, because I have some foods up there I need to eat. I miss so bad. Frida Petita's is one of my favorite places.
Lydia wants to go to Ann Arbor. That's what she's.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but they have a Frida's in Detroit though.
That's much closer to me.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
So that's kind of my goal, is to get back up there and have like a foodie adventure.
Yeah, once we can like open a country, or and
a gamey adventure
see each
Yeah,
other.
I think that would be like really fun.
Yeah.
That would be super
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
I
have a
feel so
seat at our
bad that
table.
Essen is not
Yes.
happening now, because man, you were gonna go to Essen. That's so cool.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, pay for me, and I'm like, no,
okay.
I'm gonna go, because I would do like board games in the classroom, and I had thoughts of doing the board games in the classroom with Gen Con Online, but one of the things that with Jeff and I just feel it's more personal if we're together, and then with all this COVID stuff, I would incorporate more. How you could do it in the classroom and have actual participants play.
Yeah, when we can play the game, we plan to play a couple games with everybody that were there.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
so much cooler than just, we could easily just pull up a PowerPoint, but people
Yeah.
can go online and just read it. So
Yeah.
presenting
Right.
in person so
Yeah,
much
like
better.
if you're coming here, how are we gonna make it interactive?
Right.
Yeah.
How are you gonna make it
So I was going to be presenting at Origins Online before, that all fell through.
Yeah.
And we were going to I was going to lead a Sunday virtual gaming session where I would teach people how to play the games that I've taught with my kids in the board game classroom. So it was very frustrating, so to speak, with everything happening, because it was an opportunity that I've worked hard to get approved for.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, that just fell apart, didn't it?
Right. You're
But you know what? It's their boss.
Yeah.
It's just
absolutely.
delayed. It's not over. It's just delayed.
Right.
And just think about how much more
I can improve.
we're going to do.
Yep.
So I
Now
had
you
to
have
transfer
more
that.
time. You have more.
Yeah.
Right. You have more knowledge. Right.
Now,
exactly.
not only will you introduce Google or board games in the classroom, you can teach how to do it online as well.
Yeah, so I view it as kind of like a blessing in disguise. It's because I'm so busy. Like, I'm in grad school. I'm doing like curriculum work.
Oh,
I want to just Animal Cross all day.
yeah. Agreed.
And
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit.
and I had I've been really wanting to play with my kids, but I feel like I want them to have a summer, and I want them to cope and be with their family. So
Sure.
I've always extended the invitation, like, hey, I'm always open for board games. So if they want to contact me, they want to contact me. And I feel like that's a really big thing with introducing board games to youth, is to realize to not make it forced. Like I said before, you need to make sure that they have that open communication, that is always open. There are times I didn't even want to teach some games. I think I told Jeff, I was like, Jeff, I got to teach Pitch Storm. I don't want to do it. But it made them happy. And they told me, they're like, I'm so glad you do it, because it's nice to see people.
And that keeps you going. And that's like, all right, it was worth it. It was worth
Absolutely.
doing it. Yep. It's like working out on that damn bike behind me. I don't want to do it any day, but then after I'm done, I'm like, I feel good and fulfilled. I'm gonna
And
write
go
a
get
curriculum
some
on
ice
the
cream.
damn bike. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yep. Then I can
Justified
eat this
by
ice cream now. Yep. Net zero. Exactly. Lydia, thank you so much for that discussion. That was incredible.
you.
That was a very illuminating, very
It was.
enlightening, and most of all, it was very inspiring. And
Oh.
we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And hopefully, like you said, someday you can come up here, or we can go to the gateway to the west and
In Missouri.
and
not
we can
Missouri.
in Missouri.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
you
going to
already-
Missouri. I'm not going to Missouri.
Yeah. If I go there, I can't promise I won't call it Missouri.
I'll get
from
I'll
time to
get
time.
you some gooey butter cakes, some toasted ravioli.
Yeah, that
I'll take
sounds
okay.
I'll take you to all my good food spots.
And then we'll take some pictures and have
All right.
Zach Photoshop me skinny, so we can just.
I think Zach would like that a lot.
Okay,
he would
that
he loves Photoshop.
That sounds perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for talking with us. We really, really, really appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon.
Okay,
Definitely.
sounds good.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.